Francesco Bagnaia just stood in front of the cameras at the Sachsenring and quietly ended the story everyone had already written for him. The accepted version was simple. Marc Marquez arrived, Marc was faster, and the two-time champion got beaten by the best rider on the grid. Clean, believable, and according to Bagnaia himself, not the real reason at all. Because what he described after Germany was not a rider who lost his edge. It was a machine with a specific named fault. A fault that has been sitting on his bike since the very first race of the season. So why has nobody inside Ducati fixed it? And why did the exact same problem get solved months ago for a completely different rider? This matters because of who is saying it and where he is sitting. This is not a satellite rookie moaning about an old bike. This is Pecco Bagnaia, a two-time world champion on the full factory Ducati, the bike that has set the benchmark in this sport for years. And he is 8th in the standings, 65 points off the lead, while his own teammate fights near the front of the title race on the same red bike. For a rider of his level, that gap is not a slump. It is a signal that something underneath the results is badly wrong. And when he finally explained what that something was, it did not sound like a man who ran out of talent. Start with what Bagnaia actually pointed at. Not the setup, not the tyres on the day, not one bad qualifying lap. He pointed at the rear of the motorcycle, at the grip that lets a rider turn the bike and drive it off the corner. That is the part of the Ducati that has never worked for him this year, on a left-heavy circuit that brutally punishes any bike that cannot rotate and put the power down. Marc Marquez won there for a record 10th time, matching a premier-class mark that had stood since Giacomo Agostini. Bagnaia finished 6th, 11.5 seconds back. On paper, a beaten rider. Underneath it, a rider fighting his own machine for the whole race. And here is the part the result sheet hides. This was not the weekend the problem showed up. Bagnaia has been carrying the identical fault since the opening round, race after race, circuit after circuit, while everyone watching assumed he had simply lost a step. He had not lost a step. He had lost the rear of his bike, and nobody outside his garage knew how specific that was until he said it out loud. So here is what he said, standing in the Ducati pit after Germany, in words a factory does not want on the record. I don't have rear grip. I can't use the rear for turning the bike and accelerating. Read that slowly. That is not a complaint about balance or feeling. That is a rider telling you the single most important thing a MotoGP bike has to do, and telling you his does not do it. Then he made it worse. I still have the same issue from the first race. Not since Germany. Not since a recent upgrade went wrong, from the opening race of the year. Which means every quiet Sunday you have watched Bagnaia post this season, every lost battle you chalked up to Marc simply being better, happened with the same unsolved problem bolted to the back of his bike. The story was never that he got slow. It is that he never got fixed. And this is where it changes. Because Bagnaia was asked whether anyone else on a Ducati knew this feeling, and his answer is the line the whole paddock should be talking about. The only rider that on Ducati is having my same issues is Alex. He was having my same issues before Jerez. Then they solved it. Sit with that. Out of every rider on a Desmosedici, factory and satellite, only one other man had the identical fault. Alex Marquez. On a Gresini bike. Not a lesser machine either. In 2026, Alex Marquez runs the factory spec Desmosedici, the same bike underneath Bagnaia, same specification, and out of every rider on it, only his got fixed. And oh, there is one more part of this, the part that turns a bad season into something colder. They solved it for him, before Jerez, months ago. Not the second factory bike, not the rest of the satellite grid, one customer rider, not the two-time champion, and not the face of the factory. And he is the one they fixed. Somehow, inside the same Ducati camp, that exact fault got solved on Alex Marquez's side of the garage before Jerez. Bagnaia does not even claim to know how yet. His words were that he needs to understand what Alex is doing, but the fact stands. The identical bug that is still bolted to the champion's bike stopped being a problem for the customer months ago. Think about the timeline that creates. While Bagnaia was riding around a broken rear at one race after another, the cure to his precise problem already existed inside the same company. It was not a mystery they were still chasing. It was a solved case with a patient who already got better. He just was not the patient wearing factory colours. And that is what makes his next line land the way it does. So, I really hope that this summer break will help the team to understand what to do. Understand what to do. A two-time world champion at the halfway point of the year, publicly hoping his own factory will finally work out a problem they already solved for somebody else. So let us be honest about what this actually is. For months, the narrative around Bagnaia has been a talent story. Marc Marquez arrived at Ducati. Marc was the greater rider, and the natural order reasserted itself. It is a clean explanation, and clean explanations are exactly the ones you should distrust in this sport, because the numbers stop making sense the moment you add the fault. This is the same Bagnaia who won titles on this bike, who beat the whole grid on machinery no better than this. Talent does not evaporate in a single winter. What changed was not the rider. What changed was that the rear of his bike stopped working and stayed broken, while the identical bug got patched on a Gresini chassis for a rider fighting nowhere near the championship. People thought this was about Marc Marquez being faster than Bagnaia. It was really about Ducati fixing the right problem for the wrong rider and letting their own champion carry the fault into the summer. And that stops being a question about who is the better rider. It becomes a question about who the factory is actually building for. Here is the verdict. The tidy version of Bagnaia's season, the one that fits neatly under a highlight reel, is that Marc Marquez came in and beat him. On the stopwatch at the Sachsenring, that is true. Marc was untouchable. But the stopwatch is the surface, and the surface was never the real story. The real story is that the answer to Bagnaia's exact problem already existed on another Ducati months ago. On Alex's side of the box, it got solved before Jerez. On the champions, by his own account, it still is not. Whether that is favouritism or a setup direction his side of the garage simply has not cracked. Ducati has left their own two-time world champion riding around a fault that stopped hurting a customer team back in April. Marc Marquez did not take Bagnaia's season from him. His own factory did, one unfixed race at a time. And the most damning part is not a leaked memo or an angry rival. It is Bagnaia himself in the Ducati pit, calmly explaining that the cure exists, that it went to someone else, and that he is still waiting. He is leaving Ducati at the end of this year. Ask yourself whether a garage that fixes your exact fault for a customer team first was ever really yours. So maybe the real question was never whether Marc is faster than Pecco. Maybe it is why Ducati fixed the wrong bike first. Was Bagnaia let down by his own team, or is he reaching for an excuse? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to click on the video appearing on your screen right now.